let me, before we get started, just collect some consent from you, and let you know what I'm doing. So for the past 6 years, I've been working on gathering stories from individuals from the hemophilia community, long-term survivors, mothers, any individuals impacted by HIV and AIDS or hepatitis. And your participation in this project is voluntary. No harm is anticipated to come to you other than many times when people are remembering things from the past and losses they've suffered that can be really painful. So if you want to take a break or if you want to end the interview, if you want to say goodbye, I will leave that up to you. That's completely fine. I am happy to keep your information anonymous if you would like, or confidential if you don't want your name used.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
Severe thunderstorm watch for Bethlehem, PA. It just came up. So it's coming. So I might have to jump up and close things up. That's the only thing. Okay?
Okay. That's fine.
No, I'm ready. I got my tissues here.
Okay. So you consent to participate?
Yeah, I look forward to participating. I've been in this my entire life.
Can you tell me more about that, since we don't know each other? What is your relationship with the hemophilia community?
Well, obviously I am a carrier. My great-grandfather was the illegitimate son of the King of Holland, apparently. That was in my grandmother's medical records, but I've not been able to find all of that information because they, during the bombings of Europe, a lot of the records were lost. But my great-grandfather was a severe hemophiliac factor VIII. He was also a physician in Hamburg, and he had 4 children, and he died at age 39 from doing an autopsy on someone. He hit the edge of the table, and he bled internally. My grandmother was sent over here. She was the oldest of the 4 children. She came over here when she was 17 and became an RN and married my great-grandfather, who was a civil engineer. So it started in New York City, and then he came to Bethlehem, where we live, to work on a major bridge here. Now, and from there, my mother had 4 sisters, and the only active hemophilia in those generations, because it didn't affect the sisters, was the fact that one aunt produced a severe factor VIII son, my cousin Steve, who was about 8 years older than me. And so we didn't know if we had it in the family, because back then the tests were not very valid. And even though after my cousin was born with severe hemophilia and we all went into Philadelphia on the train to be tested, they could not detect any hemophilia in our family. That would have been in the early 50s. However, I had a tonsillectomy at age 5 and almost died from bleeding, which is very typical of women who are undiagnosed. That's one of the first things to show up. And I did almost die, and I had multiple infusions of whole blood. And back then, it was donors from World War II, because my father was a serviceman, and so many of the neighbors and friends were servicemen. So most of my blood donations came from XGIs, and so I developed hepatitis B at age 5.
Wow.
And then we went on through life with all the same things that happened to all the other undiagnosed women. Horrible periods, multiple bruises, multiple injuries that were not treated, including a concussion that was not treated. Because at that period of time, in fact, I got the records from the hospital for my tonsillectomy, and in it they said, even though there is known hemophilia in the family, this is not possible because she's a female. It must be a vitamin K deficiency. So right there started the whole thing. And then when my sister, who was 7 years older than me, she had her first child, and he was a severe hemophiliac. Okay, and then they retested my blood and found I had a low clotting level, but that was all. They couldn't tell me any more about the carrier detection because that still was not available. So I did have a low clotting factor, but that didn't tell me that I was a carrier. Mm-hmm. And then my sister produced a second severe hemophiliac. At the same time, I became pregnant with my daughter, who is now 53 years old. And when she was 2, I had my son. And because we were now better known to have hemophilia in the family, the placenta was taken to Central Blood Bank in Pittsburgh. We were living in Ohio. And from that cord, they could tell that he had severe factor VIII deficiency. And when he was born in 71, we were living in Ohio, and I became very, very active in the hemophilia community and serving on the board of the Pittsburgh chapter of the National. But at about 1975, Dr. Oscar Rotnoff at the Cleveland Clinic conducted a study, which is still available. You can see it. And I was a participant. Basically, he took 60 women, 30 known carriers of hemophilia, 30 non. From that test, he determined that a third of the carriers of severe factor VIII had lower than normal levels of clotting. Basically, you probably know anything 40% or lower. And mine was about 18%. So I was 25 when I was first diagnosed. And they gave us the label of symptomatic carriers. But being a symptomatic carrier is not a medical test. That is a genetic test. And so that could not be recognized for treatment. And I bled profusely after both children. You probably already know a woman's factor level goes up in pregnancy, but then falls rapidly afterwards. So once again, I was showing all the signs of a bleeder, but there was nothing really to do except whole blood. And that was difficult to get. Then they went to plasma and then cryoprecipitate. I did have some of that throughout the periods of time. And my son was, he was 13. We started infusing him at home when he's only 2, which was unheard of. But the head of the Hemophilia Treatment Center in Pittsburgh, Dr. Perry Oskins, was a severe factor VIII himself. And he would come down to our house in Ohio, and every weekend we would have sticking parties, learning how to infuse. Because one night up in Pittsburgh, he stuck my son like 11 times, and he looked at me and said, you can't do any worse than me. So why don't we try you doing it and your husband so that you don't have to travel this far for treatment. And so we did, and that helped a lot, but the hitting a vein on a 2-year-old was awful. Mm-hmm. And it was very traumatic. And my son had his first bleed when he was 3 months old in his knee. And that's, again, typical of hemophilia with infants. And to treat him was very difficult in the hospital because they had to use head veins to get his veins. I don't know how much you know about hemophilia. I hope I'm not telling you a whole lot that I'm not repeating things you already know.
Well, I'm not part of the hemophilia community. I've been researching it for 6 years, so this is great for me.
Okay, fine. All right, so then I had started my bachelor's degree in elementary ed and then left and had my children, but I went back to night school.